Two main factors affect the development of any species: genetics and habitat. To examine the habitat more thoroughly, we have divided it into environment, feeding, and population selection. In a series of episodes dedicated to roe deer, we will deal with all these variables in detail. In this episode, we will deal with the genetic factor, which is undoubtedly the most important of them all. Roe deer, shadows of the forest, genetics, the first factor. Although the content deals with biological aspects of roe deer, it will always be related to the hunting management of this species, demonstrating hunts and stalking. The importance of genetics, with respect to other factors, is demonstrated by a biological premise. In identical habitat conditions, with low-quality genetics, good specimens will never be obtained. On the other hand, with good population genetics, even in poor-quality habitats, good specimens can be produced, albeit occasionally depending on other variables. But we also know that habitats of precarious quality over a long period of time lead to deterioration in population genetics. For this reason, in the long term, all factors are fundamental. The evolution of national roe deer trophies is an excellent index to assess the state of population genetics throughout the country. The map of the best roe deer trophies hunted in Spain during the last 2 decades offers us a fairly approximate idea of the increase and progression of this species. Although it only reflects the trophies registered in the National Homologation Registry, there being hundreds that are not registered, it serves as a reference to verify that there are concentrations in certain areas. It is usually attributed to the food and the specific nutrients that may be in some areas, as one of the determining causes, always counting, as we said, on good genetics. While remaining true, the real reason is purely biological and more complex, which is applicable to all species, including the roe deer, and is defined as the ecological optimum. It is a definition that should be remembered by all those who make conjectures attributing the great trophies to various reasons, sometimes even contributing unconventional ideas. In this respect, the roe deer is no different from other animal and plant species. Each species finds its ecological optimum in certain areas that meet the best conditions of all the factors that influence their development, which are those already mentioned: genetics, habitat, feeding, environment, and selection of population numbers, and will be treated throughout this series dedicated to Capreolus capreolus. From the center of the Iberian Peninsula towards the south, most of the year is too dry and hot for this little deer. Although quite adaptable, it mostly seeks out forests that are drier and cooler than those of the humid Atlantic climate on the north, or those of the hot Mediterranean climate of the south. Therefore, it is not found far to the north, nor in the southern regions, except in some specific areas that, due to altitude, soil, and vegetation, offer a suitable microclimate. On the Cantabrian coast, leafy forests with substrate and a humid environment predominate. Soils with rich vegetal humus, which have a mineralization different to the one existing between northern and southern zones. On the other hand, in the central strip of the northern half, the habitat maintains an annual average of cooler, drier weather, with optimal mineralized soils for the vegetation that this species ingests. The central strip of the north, which represents the ecological optimum as evidenced by the fact that the best density of roe deer trophies is produced there, is home to the largest and best preserved juniper groves in Europe, and one of the largest in the world. Although not in continuous sections, it runs from east to west, along the Duero and Arlanza rivers. Its main mass is found among the junipers of the Arlanza in Burgos, and extends towards the Calatayud in Soria, and from there it loses density towards Calatayud in Zaragoza. The line then touches Calamocha in Teruel, and from there goes to Molina de Aragón, Sigüenza and Atienza in Guadalajara, and then continues through Burgos de Osma in Soria to Santo Domingo de Silos, Lerma and Peral de Arlanza in Burgos, where the line of the privileged juniper grove stops before reaching Quintana del Puente in Palencia. Around the central green strip, there are large areas marked in brown, where in recent years there have been captures of roe deer homologated among the highest scores, highlighting an important branch that descends from the Sierra de Pela and Añón between the provinces of Soria and Segovia, and connects with the north of La Alcarria in Guadalajara and part of Cuenca. Specimens with large antlers that are found sporadically in other scattered places seem to be an exception compared to the high concentrations in the strip where its ecological optimum is found. In the chapter dedicated to food in this series, we will delve into the antler's development and its mineralization. Plant cover depends on various factors, like the soil with its organic and mineral components, the sun for photosynthesis with its annual insolation levels, and the prevailing seasonal climate. This is where hunters and managers should take note, because it is not precisely in the exuberant spring when roe deer antlers are formed, but rather in the middle of winter, since the germ of what will be the future antlers begins when they shed those of the previous year at the beginning of winter. In the Northern Hemisphere, as we know, the 21st March to the 20th June is spring. The 21st June to the 20th September is summer. The 21st September to the 20th December is autumn. And the 21st December to the 20th March is winter. In the north-central strip of the Iberian Peninsula, the end of December is when the germ of the new antlers pushes the old one out. From that crucial moment, all the factors intervene in what will be the final result. Between December and January, almost all of them tend to shed their antlers. The first to shed them are the oldest and most vigorous specimens, while with the young and the least developed, it's more irregular and later. For these reasons, we cannot focus or analyze the food materialized in the antlers in the spring, since it is precisely in the harsh months of January, February and March in the central strip of the north, that is, before the burst of sweet and juicy vegetation, when they develop the main part of the antlers. In fact, when the cold still grips the fields, with rough and dry mountain grass, with snowy or frosty soils, the velvety epithelium that surrounds the horns is in full development. The germ cells under the lint are highly irrigated by arteries, veins and capillaries that gradually deposit the mineral components and gradually form the hard structure of their defenses. It is, in fact, a tremendous physiological effort, whose development is also affected by its parallel hormonal evolution. In little more than 2 months, the large males go from being dislodged to showing off impressive antlers. Genetics, as we say, is essential, but a diet rich in mineral components and nutrients is crucial at this stage. With good genetics, but poorly fed, small, fragile, and defective antlers are produced. The same can be said of competitive tension and pressure from humans and natural predators, without forgetting the negative influence of internal and external parasites, which besiege them unbearably, especially blood-sucking ones. All this signifies environmental stress, which also harms the development of the antlers. We will talk about the influence of the environment in greater depth in the episode dedicated to it. Within the genetic factor in the development of antlers, the fundamental importance of females is usually overlooked. However, we must not forget that their genetic quality accounts for at least 50% of the offspring. Without going into detail now of dominant aspects of transmitted or hereditary characters, the selective complexity of their population is much more complicated than the males, requiring laboratory analysis. However, it is dealt with in another documentary in which we will deal with the expansion and distribution of roe deer. Due to the factors and variables involved in the development of this species and its trophies in the wild, without human intervention, it is somewhat difficult to estimate from a distance, without error, the age of a roe deer. In a brief review, documented in images, we can observe the different stages of growth of the antlers in correspondence with age. With rare exceptions, the roe deer in the reference areas are born in May. The male specimens, during their first 8 months of life, do not present any visible protuberance on their heads. They may have small buttons or points under the skin of what will be the bony pivot of the skull. When February arrives, at 9 months, some grow 2 small plugs of a few inches, and others develop 2 medium-length rods, even with signs of some little fighting or counter-tips. In May, when they are 1 year old, they have small horns that are no longer fluff. This will be his first set. The following February, when they are 1 year and 9 months old, they can grow rods with 4 or 6 discrete points, still without definition in size and thickness, although the coronets already present a notably greater volume compared to their first year. In the still image, we can see on the left 2 youngsters with small plugs or rods, with a short and stocky body, still with a childlike face and appearance. They are now 10 months old in March. They will be 1 year old in May. While on the right, we observe the differences with another specimen from the previous year. It is now 22 months old. In May, it will be 2 years old. Its body is already more slender, elongated, and its hide is darker. The face is also longer, and the 2 pointed horns are thicker, already highlighting the voluminous development of what will be the coronets. The image is from March. Until May, they still have almost 2 more months of growth until stripping. The specimens close to their 3rd year, at 33 months, between January and February, develop 6 points under their velvety skin. If they are already adults, hormonal maturity now leads them to strip in March instead of May, almost 2 months earlier, then showing off their clean, bony antlers. At that age, the antlers and coronets still lack thickness in proportion to the volume they acquire under favorable conditions from 4 to 5 years. Later they keep them or they thicken slightly until they are 6 or 7, although in many cases they progressively decline towards 9 years of life. Those stages in their development are in the harsh conditions of total freedom in the wild, while the specimens cared for in large enclosures, without competition, without stress and supplied with additional food, experience much faster growth. If they also have the appropriate mineral and vitamin supplements, they make a very rapid qualitative leap in the size of the antlers, sometimes going from a few rods with some points in the first year directly to 6 points in the second. This also happens in the countryside, in freedom, in many cases in the most privileged areas, where they enjoy the most favorable conditions. Despite all this, it is difficult to determine the age of any specimen in the field. It is necessary to observe with powerful optical devices, taking our time. The hunt. When hunting, the conditioning factor of uncertainty, added to the ephemeral nature of some opportunities, doesn't always mean that an animal can be thoroughly studied. Jorge and Nacho are keen roe deer hunters who never rush. On the contrary, perhaps they are excessively patient when thoroughly examining each specimen they come across. Before pulling the trigger, they look at every detail of the animal to assess for sure if it can be taken down. In this case, by chance, we ran into a good absent-minded male, accompanied by a female. There was no time to get the telescope out. He was on his way back towards the woods. The female was about to come out into the open and might be able to see us. Because of the limited time in this situation, and seeing his outstanding antlers and the apparent length in relation to the ears and head, they decided to get him.
Yes, he's a very good one. Very long antlers. It's 84 yards. Don't waste any time. Look how long its antlers are. You'll see his head now. He's going to come straight at us. Look how long his antlers are.
Está muerto.
Seeing it at a distance in the field isn't the same as seeing it on the screen with a zoom lens. Added to the pressing situation was the presence of the female, who could emit alarm snorts and startle the buck.
Long antlers. It isn't the same one as yesterday, is it? But it's a good one. It's young.
It had long antlers. I was mistaken by the size of its antlers. They looked longer.
To make matters worse, another factor added to the confusion. It was the exact place they had seen another large male at twilight, almost in the dark, and they thought they had surprised him before going for cover. This confusion and expecting the other buck is what led Jorge to pull the trigger. This time, he had to settle for a specimen with well-formed but modest trophy antlers. However, most of the time, they observe them for so long that the animals often take flight, although they would have had plenty of time to take a shot.
We're looking to see if it has ostrosis, which is a parasitic fly, and its larvae would be here, in the larynx and in the trachea, and we see that it's clean. It has no disease.
Better chances. The usual dynamic, as we know, begins by arriving at the hunting ground and carefully prospecting the panorama to discover what may be in sight. In areas with excessive cereal crops, although they seem to be in very open terrain, far from lush forests, in reality, late in the spring, the height of the crops covers the roe deer almost completely. In these open spaces, the crops themselves perfectly replace the cover they find in the dense forest. Especially in birthing season and during the first weeks of life of the young, which is when they are most vulnerable. In fact, people's respect in not entering the crop fields is the best protection for the helpless fawns. With natural predators, mainly foxes, wolves and golden eagles, something similar happens, as nothing stands out in the monotony. Even though they have seen the mothers around, it's very difficult to find the defenseless offspring, especially when left alone, immobile during their forced absences, for long periods of time they spend eating and drinking. The males very often choose the freshness and cover of the crop fields too. If they are lying down, they go completely unnoticed. And at the same time, it frees them from the unbearable siege of insects. Even more so in full bloom, swarming by the thousands among the exuberant vegetation of the forest. Although it seems that you can see everything at a glance in these open spaces, quickly ruling out the presence of the long-awaited roe deer, assuming them to be in the woods, in reality, they are out there half hidden, sometimes covered by brambles, now full of flowers and tender stems. And also in the hedges and areas between the farms, simply sheltered amongst the thyme and thorny gorse. Often, after 30 minutes or an hour observing, which seems eternal, the apparent initial absence of roe deer turns into the presence of dozens of them. That's why you have to stop at the frequented areas and scrutinize the terrain inch by inch. We can see that in this environment, during the spring, they subsist as if they were immersed in a green ocean, where it seems like a periscope stands out. With eyes and ears above the crops, they are alert to any danger, and in the case of the males, even the horns go unnoticed in the distance, resembling the dry sticks of a bush. The leisurely observation paid off on this occasion. A male and a female emerged from the sea of crops to eat the juicy sprouts of a fallow field. They fed completely unaware of us, and there's plenty of time to assess the antlers. It's very symmetrical, long at the ends, and with well-formed tines. An excellent trophy by all accounts. This time, Jorge was convinced that he had a good specimen in his sights.
He's hit. He's hit. He's going to fall. Can you see him down there? He stopped. Stop there. He's on the ground. Stay there.
Quietos, 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 quietos.
Stay where you are.
Quédate quieto mirándole, no se levante. Que no se levante.
He's down on the ground. When he went back like that,
Sí, cuando cayó para atrás está muerto ya.
he's dead already.
Sí. Nacho, mírale tú a ver. A ver. parece que es elegante. Buah, qué aparato. Bien. Bravo, bravo.
He said, "What antlers?"
Bravo, bravo. Muy bien. Gracias, gracias. Bien, muy bonito. Buen tiro. Qué tamponazo ha pegado. Buen tiro y seguro que es buen trofeo. Ha pinchado, ha pinchado.
He's hit. He's hit. He's going to fall. Can you see him down there? He stopped. Stop there. He's down on the ground. When he went back like that. He's dead already.
Quieto, quieto.
He isn't distracted and takes the necessary precautions with his rifle.
Bueno, pues descargamos ya.
Well, let's unload Nacho. I think we should, to be safe. The roebuck is on the ground, better safe than sorry. We have to get the shell.
A good trophy for sure.
Hay que recuperar lo único el casquillo. No.
The bramble's up there.
Those there?
No, the smaller one there.
Aquella encina aquí, Sí, la de lado.
How many yards?
234, according to the rangefinder. An accurate shot.
Not only did they have time to assess the animal properly, but they calmly measured the distance to correctly calculate the shot. The trajectory was perfect.
Ahí están las tierras guapas. Allá guapas,
Alberto had gone to look in another area, and when he heard the sound of the gunshot, he called to find out the result. Soon they would send him a photo of the excellent roebuck they'd shot.
From that one, not from there, because we shot up from there, I wouldn't get the angle. That home oak.
They insisted on the location to take the shot from to verify the trajectory through the valley, because the shot was very precise and explosive.
The shot went so well. We should do it again sometime. You see a roe deer hit and it looks like they're going to fall straight away. But you're mistaken. They're tough. It heard the shot and took a while to fall. Look. Look. It's got long horns. Look at the coronets. It's very symmetrical.
Esta contra.
This tine is a little shorter. This tip is weaker, but very nice.
Look at his coronets. It's like gold.
Gold? Yes. It's got around 130 pearls. Something like that. And it isn't a very old roebuck.
Nacho?
It isn't an old roebuck. Is it, Nacho?
No. No es un corzo viejo. Vamos a ver la dentición que tiene. A ver qué dentición tiene, pero no se le ve.
Let's check its teeth. But he doesn't look old.
Very good. It wasn't easy. It took a few days of stalking, but it was worth it in the end. A very nice roebuck.
A golden roebuck. It's taken 4 days of stalking. He kept avoiding us. That's what old males are like. Well, 255 yards. An effective shot. He moved 10 yards before he died, and then dropped dead. We'll have to tag him now, and then remove the meat. We must take advantage of everything.
Great. Congratulations.
Thanks. Always at the base of the antlers.
Ahí va, que se me cae.
We've noted down the day. At the base of the antler. We get it. And put it on. Ah, it's wet.
Ahí está.
They're a tagged animal. Well, that's it.